Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Silent, but deadly. The grass waves to the breath-filled song of the wind. No, wait. That doesn't sound quite right. Maybe just the voice of the wind. The luscious grass dances as the wind sings. Something like that anyway. I look around me, casually, like I'm taking in the view, and not at all looking for a sudden change in the landscape that would signal my end. Should I admit that I'm scared? I'd be mad not to. But then this is madness. I'm narrating my life because my life actually depends on it. The moment I go quiet, it'll come for me. I know that much. Sneaky bollocks, tricking people into being quiet when that's how it finds them. I still don't get that. What form of creature finds its prey via silence? I thought it might hate sound, but no one is quiet in their final moments. And it doesn't seem fazed by the screaming. I shouldn't talk about that. Difficult to filter, though. I can't stop the words coming out. The words are my shield. All I have to do is think of things to say as I walk these next few fields, and then I'll be in the next village, and I can find a radio, or just something, anything, to make some noise for me. Then I can sleep. I am so tired. Wait a minute. What if I yawn? Does a yawn count? Or will I be interrupting the flow of sound that protects me? I can't fall or hit a limb against anything, nor can I snag myself on an errant nail. Errant. Where did that come from? I've noticed that my language is getting more flowery. That's good. I don't have to find quite so many words. They're flowing out from me, as though the tap in my mind has been turned a little more. I never knew I had a tap in my mind. This'll do. I can manage this. And I need to stay on top of it, conscious of the stream. I don't want to get carried away and pause in a fog of confusion. I could say any old words. I could do that, but I think I'd go mad as I stirred that crazy word salad around. And then where would I be? I need to keep it together, find somewhere to sit it out, surround myself with a wall of sound, and then sleep? Sleep seems a world away. I'd need someone with me so we could take it in turns to sit watch. Would that work? Would a radio even work? Does it work if the noise isn't coming from you? Does the quality of the sound make a difference? A voice that comes from a mouth is different to one that comes via a speaker. Am I kidding myself? Does it matter that I'm kidding myself? I've made it this far, and that's pretty good. I had safety in numbers for a while back there. It's about survival now. I'm on my own. I've got to keep going. Buy myself time. The creatures might not even be here anymore. Moved on to easier pickings. I don't believe that for a moment. You're still there, aren't you guys? Watching and waiting. All I have to do is pause these words of mine, and you'll be skipping out to meet me in the middle of this damn field. I'd say that you don't see them coming. That's not quite right. It's that when you do see them coming, you're done for. Game over. What little warning you have is useless. A blur of movement. Pain. Gone. You can't outrun what you can't see. They don't move like anything on this earth. There's no approach, no stalking. They come from nowhere, and the more I think about it, I do think they come from some other dimension. They just appear as though they can pass through gaps in space-time that we can't see. Could they be demons? That makes more and more sense to me. Come to snatch our souls away. Consume us. The end of days. No one thought it would look like this, sound like this. Do our voices cover another sound? The beating of our hearts? Or is it really the sound of our silence that beckons them forth? I'm searching for answers where I think there are likely none. That's what we do, though, isn't it? We search for answers. We walk into a room we've never been in before, and we wonder what the hell it all is. Thankfully, rooms have conventions, like bloody walls and a sodding floor and a buggering ceiling, crappy sofas if it's a living room, a shitty cooker, and an arsehole fridge if it's a kitchen, a bastard bed if it's a... What the hell has happened here? It looks the same, but it's entirely different. I loved walking through these fields. Now it's all painted in violent death. Everyone's violent death. My violent death. I don't want to die. Not like this. But what makes me different? What makes me so special that I think I can evade the fate of everyone else? I'd laugh if this wasn't so serious. I don't think I'll ever laugh again. At least it's quick. It seems quick, anyway. Oh, what if they drag you through those invisible gaps? What if the pain goes on beyond what I have seen? Why do my thoughts go there? Think happy thoughts. Why is the bloody happy cupboard bare? I wish we lived by the sea. That would be nice. I wonder whether they can follow you over the water. I hope not. I hope there are places that they can't go. I hope they eventually give up. They won't, though, will they? Would we? Perhaps they're aliens. Or a lab experiment gone wrong. Doesn't matter, though, does it? If my nemesis introduced himself as Norman, shook my hand, and did me the courtesy of telling me what he was, where he came from, and why he and his mates were wreaking violent and bloody murder across the planet, it doesn't change the important bit, does it? I'm not going to smile and tell him that that's all right then. I suppose it would give me the opportunity for a moment of defiance. I could tell Norman, the planet conqueror, to bugger off. You know what? I can do that anyway, can't I? I can shout my defiance at this new world of Normans. I might not have the final word, but I'll have given him what for. Might even feel good, if only for the duration of my shouting. Yeah, I'm going to do it. What have I got to lose? I'm going to lose anyway, so may as well go for it. Tell you what, Norman, I'm going to primal scream it. I'm going to dig deep down and bring my ancient part to the fore. We are animals, after all. A force to be reckoned with. And I don't give a shit if I lose my voice doing it. I will keep talking afterwards in any case. You're not getting me like that, you sneaky little bastard. Here goes. Bugger off, Norman. Yeah. Wow. Hey, what was that? I can still see it. A gap. Norman! I shouted, a gap open. That's why you don't like our voices. Our voices are our power. Oh yes, of course they are. This changes everything. Yes. I'm going to bring it to you, Normie baby. I'm going through that gap of yours, and I'm going to shout your whole house down. What else is there? I can't keep this talk up. You'll get me in the end if I keep running away. But if I bring it to you and shout you down, that might just do it. I'm coming for you, Norm. And we're going to talk it out. Just you and me. Then, when we're done, I'll tell all your friends. I've got hope now, Norman. Hope and a plan. Best of all, I have belief. That makes me dangerous. We're not sheep. We were never sheep. We're not even wolves. We're different, and we're difficult. We're magic, Norman. And my words are a spell you are not going to break. Coming, whether you're ready or not. Death of the Lilacs. I never should have opened that letter. But from the moment my fingers brushed the aged paper, thin and fragile, it seduced me. It all started on estate sale day. On any other Thursday, I would wake up crazy excited, strip out of my cotton PJs, and swap them for jeans and my gray V-neck, the one with vintage across the chest in fading white vinyl. I would appreciate the scent of the fresh lilacs that had just bloomed outside my window, their enchanting aroma drifting in as a passenger on the early morning breeze. Then I'd head out for a long, adventurous day of treasure hunting. There's something magical about rescuing a forgotten piece of furniture or trinket. It drives me, knowing that each piece will start a new life, absorbing new memories. It is intoxicating. But that Thursday, I woke up with an uneasy feeling that I immediately brushed off, assuming it was residual bad dream funk. Through my vintage lace curtains, I could see evidence of a cloudy day, doing nothing to brighten my spirit or improve my mood. And then there were the lilacs. This morning, their fragrance was thick, overpowering, and instantly turned my stomach. With an irritated mumble, I reached over and slid the window shut with a sharp thud. Pulling the blanket over my head, I heavily considered going back to sleep. However, 15 minutes later, I was dressed and headed out the door. Unheard of for me. It was as if I had somewhere urgent to be, but when I checked my calendar app, there was nothing booked. As I locked the door behind me, the heavy scent of the lilacs filled the air, overbearing and inescapable. They had sprung up from out of nowhere just a few weeks ago, their soft purple and white blossoms spilling over the wooden railing of my front porch. At first, I welcomed them, admired them, but now they felt invasive, their presence needling at my already fraying mood. I had been at the first sale of the day for about half an hour, and it seemed like a bust. After wandering from room to room, sifting through boxes and stacked containers of someone else's memories, I was just about ready to head to the next stop on my Google Maps list. As I stepped into the kitchen, I suddenly lost my balance and grabbed the long slab of butcher block countertop to steady myself. Instantly, my senses were overwhelmed. Years of long-forgotten Sunday morning breakfasts, afternoon bread proofs, and late-night Christmas cookie bakes. The heavy scent of bacon and coffee made me dizzy and hungry at the same time. I heard a child laughing and turned to see a little girl hiding her giggles behind a cupped hand as she pointed at Tom, chasing Jerry across the flickering screen of an old tube TV. Then a scream rang out, sharp and raw, echoing into my soul, almost as if it came from within. As I released my grip on the countertop, I spun around to see what had happened. Instantly, everything changed. The warm scents of breakfast were gone. The little girl, gone. The TV wasn't even plugged in, its frayed cord hanging eerily off to the side. It was just the humdrum sound of a normal estate sale, with people milling about and haggling the cashier with lower price offers. I just stood still, trying to breathe and make sense of what had just happened, before I could grasp any ounce of stability. A sudden ding from the oven sent me nearly jumping out of my own skin. I bolted past the cashier and straight for the front door. Edith, I stopped. My feet, my heart, and my breath. Everything just stopped. My body turned and drifted past the "Watch Your Step" sign as I felt pulled down the wooden steps into the garage. It sat still, empty of people, empty of life, yet oddly full of the scent of lilacs. Why couldn't I escape it? I hadn't been in this room yet. I had peeked inside earlier, but it seemed full of things I usually ignored. Pesticides, old mulch, motor oil, nothing that belonged in an antique booth. Yet here I was, drowning in the scent of lilacs with not a bloom in sight. Why had I come? I wanted to leave. All at once, sunlight pushed its way through the clear glass windows of the garage door, spilling onto a small, frail woman seated at the desk in front of me. The same desk that, just seconds before, had been buried beneath years of dust and piled high with empty boxes. An old ladder leaning against one side. All of that was gone now, and I could smell breakfast again. Edith, I work all day to put food on this table. You think it's gonna cook itself? The dark voice boomed behind me. I flinched, but couldn't tear my eyes from her. The woman turned and looked right at me. And then, after just a second of recognition, right through me, she turned back to the desk and in a swift, almost frantic motion, shoved a piece of paper into an envelope. I heard her whispering something, but the words were too soft to make out. "Damn it, woman, where are you?" came the voice from the top of the stairs. My instinct was to spin around, to see him, but my eyes stayed fixed on Edith. She was facing me now, her gaze moving down the staircase as he came down. "You know better than to keep me waiting," he said, his words rolling down the back of my neck like sap oozing from a wounded sweet gum tree. I resisted the urge to wipe it away. Edith slid her trembling hands into her apron. Her gray eyes hovered just above my head, steady in his direction. Slowly, her shoulders curled back, pushing her tiny frame to stand tall. Her chin lifted just enough to prove her fortitude. But the slow rise and fall of her chest wasn't from resolve. It was control, each breath measured to contain her emotions. "Yes, I'm sorry. I should have been more mindful of your time. The bacon's on now. I'll have breakfast ready in just a few minutes." I could feel his heat standing uncomfortably close behind me. The hair on the back of my neck lifted with each of his heavy breaths as he considered his reply. Finally, he muttered, "You'd better." The sound of his heavy boots grew lighter as he moved toward the stairs. Her eyes were back on me, not through me. She stood still for a moment, as if thinking something through. Then, as if she had made her decision, she turned toward the desk and opened the top left drawer. She looked at me again, then down at the drawer. I followed her gaze. With a careful hand, she slid the bottom of the drawer back, pulled the envelope from her apron pocket, placed it in the hollow space, and closed the drawer. Her gaze shifted to me once more, her eyes trying to tell me a story, calling my name. Her mouth opened, her expression full of apology, but no words came. As she took a step forward, the sunlight caught the iridescent trail of a single tear that had run down her cheek. My heart hurt for her. All at once, she was gone. The sun had vanished. The windows on the garage door had been painted over years ago. The acrid smell of gasoline, oil, and pesticides flooding my nose once again. I gasped and wiped my face, realizing that I, too, had tears streaming down my cheeks. I took a few steps toward the desk, my eyes locked on the drawer. My pulse quickened as I reached out to pull it open. "Miss, do you need help?" came a tiny voice from the top of the stairs. I jumped and screamed. Then she screamed. With our hands over our chests, we both burst into laughter. "I am so sorry, doll. I didn't mean to startle you. It's totally okay. I was in my own world." I took a deep, slow breath, in and out. "Actually, yes, I would like some help. I'm interested in this desk, but I don't see a price on it," I said, pointing to the spot where the woman had just been sitting. "Oh, that old thing is junk, honey. One of the drawers is stuck, and it's missing a leg." She turned to head back through the door. I looked at the desk, then back at her. "All the same, I'd love to take it off your hands. Would you take 20 for it?" She stopped and turned around. Her expression shifted. I could see the dollar signs in her eyes and a slight hint of a smirk on her lips. Then, just as quickly, it changed again to a look of faux concern. "Well, that did belong to the homeowner, and I am trying to get the family top dollar. I couldn't possibly let it go for $20, but I imagine they'd be okay with $50. Does that work for you? $20 is usually my price point for old furniture. $20 and little to no damage, other than age. But she was asking $50, and it would need extensive repairs. Not that I was buying it for resale anyway. Honestly, I felt like I was out of mind when I agreed. But the next thing out of my mouth was, "Sure, 50 is great. Can I have someone pick it up in an hour?" "Well now, that would be lovely." The edges of the woman's mouth curled into a slow, knowing grin, full of satisfaction, like a cat licking cream from its whiskers. 4 hours, 3 stops, and 2 cups of Java later, I was back home, where Jeff, my boyfriend, was waiting in front of my driveway with the desk. "Sadie, what were you thinking? This is a piece of junk. Please tell me you got it for free?" he grumbled as I slid out of my Jeep. He leaned against the bed of his truck, arms folded, looking cute, but not happy. "Oh, come on. You can see it has great bones," I said, resting my hand on the side of his face as I stood on my tiptoes and gave him a light kiss. He looked into my eyes, sighed, and wrapped his arms around me. "You owe me," I smiled. "Okay, where do you want this thing? Back porch, please. Why don't you go make us something to eat while I do your dirty work?" "You got it," I said with a wink. As I walked up the sidewalk, my stomach sank. The lilacs, so full and lush just hours ago, were dead. Their once vibrant petals had shriveled, decay clinging to them, burnishing the edges with shadow. Even though it felt morbid, I reached out to brush one with my fingertip. It crumbled to dust, carried away on the wind. I had enjoyed them while they lasted, until this morning. Now, an ominous feeling settled in my chest, hauntingly familiar, though I couldn't understand why. The scent had been overwhelming earlier, almost stifling. And while I didn't necessarily want them back, their sudden decay felt oddly personal. 10 minutes later, we sat on the back patio, eating lunch and staring at the desk. I debated whether I should tell him about what I had experienced earlier. We had been seeing each other for about 6 months, and things were going mostly okay. He didn't want to put a label on things, which felt like a little bit of a red flag. But I wanted to see where things went a little longer. He had some great qualities. Only time would tell if they outweighed the rest. I really did want things to progress between us, and they say communication is key. So I decided to tell him. As I told him the story, he ate his chicken salad sandwich and slurped his lemonade, his eyes fixed on me, except for the occasional glance at the desk. When my story was over, he wiped his mouth with one of my daisy-covered napkins, downed the rest of his lemonade, and said, "Well then, let's get this drawer open." He made quick work of the stuck drawer, and after searching for only a second, found the notch that slid back the false bottom. I couldn't believe it. The false bottom alone was a stretch, but seeing the letter sitting there in real life, insane. I reached into the drawer and picked up the envelope, my hands trembling, just as Edith's had, but for different reasons. The paper was aged, its edges rough and slightly brittle. I turned it over, lifted the flap, and slowly pulled out the lilac-colored paper, careful not to damage it. Hauntingly beautiful. It was clearly handmade, bits of lilac petals pressed between its uneven fibers. Should I open it? I glanced at Jeff. He shrugged. "That's up to you." I wasn't sure. Edith's eyes had been haunted, and while part of me felt like I was meant to open the letter, another part couldn't shake the sadness in her eyes. It lingered, heavy and unsettling. Still, something pulled at me, urging me to open it. Before I even realized what I was doing, I unfolded the letter, top first, then bottom. One single line stretched across the middle of the page. I wanted to warn you. I was trapped. I am sorry. I read the line again. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I could smell bacon. The room was spinning. My stomach was sick. Somewhere in the distance, Jeff was calling my name, but it was faint, muffled. The air was thick, damp and dank, clinging to my skin like old mildewed laundry, left to long in the wash. I couldn't breathe. I closed my eyes and tried to remember my breathing techniques. In for 5, hold for 4, out for 7. Or was it 8? Damn it. But my slow, deep breaths came out rattled. Reaching for the chair, I sank into it, resting my elbows on the table and my head in my hands. If I could just get my thoughts together. All at once, visions of an entire lifetime slammed into me. Emotions crashed through me, too many to name. I felt joy, then sadness, heard laughter, then a baby's first cry. My baby's first cry? But everything was coated in darkness. I opened my eyes. The lilac-colored paper lay on the desk in front of me, blank. My hand involuntarily moved, picking up a pen from nowhere. My breath was stuck in my throat as, in horror, I watched myself write. I tried to warn you. I was trapped. I am sorry. Sadie, I work all day to put food on this table. You think it's gonna cook itself? Jeff's voice thundered from the top of the staircase, just beyond the door leading into the house. My stomach dropped as a wave of realization hit me so hard I would have fallen if I weren't already sitting. I turned to face the young girl behind me. I already knew she'd be there. My eyes met hers, and I only knew of one way out. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with guilt, I hurriedly stuffed the letter into the envelope. A single tear slipped down my cheek as I whispered, I never should have opened that letter. The couple in the glass. The first time she saw them, she didn't think too much of it. Just an exceptionally attractive, well-dressed couple having dinner together in their multi-million-dollar penthouse while overlooking downtown Chicago. Bev Thomas watched them from the balcony of the apartment, hidden away in the shadows of the night, wondering what it must be like. The apartment she was currently cleaning for work was cherry enough, but nothing compared to the place these two lived in. She'd studied them, admired them, became invested in them. But never once did it occur to her during that first sighting that anything was wrong. The woman wasn't just beautiful. She was elegant. Elegant in the way that women just weren't anymore. Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, Jackie Kennedy. Women who embodied class, charm, and fashion. The woman in the window looked as though she belonged on that same list, regardless of the fact that she was completely unknown to Bev. She wasn't a celebrity, wasn't an actress or a singer, and Bev didn't recognize her from the world of politics. She was just a stunning, refined, angelic individual who looked as though she'd descended from heaven itself to grace the earth with her beauty. She wore a ball gown of sorts, pale yellow, and doused in what Bev could only imagine were real diamonds from the way the material shimmered. Bev couldn't help but allow the jealousy to set in. How could one person have it all? If her looks weren't enough, there was the man seated across from her. He was unrealistically handsome. She was convinced he'd had work done to make him look that way, like he'd just arrived from a factory somewhere. But inside, she doubted it. Something about his face told her it was all natural. He landed somewhere between Paul Newman and Henry Cavill. From the Newman side came the piercing blue eyes, so deep in color that Bev could see them clearly from the balcony across the boulevard. The stubble of a full beard gave him the timeless, rugged quality. But then came the Cavill features. A strong, chiseled jaw, a full head of wavy auburn hair, and a physique that looked as though Michelangelo had risen from the dead and carved it himself. Bev's life could have stayed perfectly normal if it had only been that one time, but it hadn't. She cleaned that apartment 5 nights a week for an owner that was in town once a year, and every single night she found them in that exact same spot, just looking at each other. The second time, she found herself talking out loud about it. After all, it was just her. The walls weren't going to be critical of her self-monologue. The hell are they doing? Every night? She whined as she dusted away at the shelving and priceless decor. If I had money like that, I'd never cook another thing ever again. Then it occurred to her, and she nodded to herself at the realization. Probably a personal chef brings the 5-star menu to their front door. Unbelievable. She watched them as they ate, trying to imagine what the steak and asparagus tasted like when you were that well off. But from what she could tell, they didn't seem to enjoy it all that much. Probably eat like royalty so much that the glamour wore off, she'd thought. She'd forced herself to ignore them after that for the entirety of the second night. It was when she arrived for her shift on the 3rd evening that the situation started to feel off. Something just wasn't quite right about them. 3rd night in a row, and there they were, seating by the window, candlelit dinner and champagne. It was like watching someone's anniversary on a loop. That night, she didn't ignore them. That night, she actually moved a chair from the other side of the living room to the window where she could make herself comfortable as she stalked. She began to realize small details about them. Their clothing had changed but their expressions were exactly the same. Stoic. As she watched their rendezvous unfold, she noticed that neither of them took a single bite of their meals or a solitary sip of their wine. Odd. Then there was Prince Charming's facial hair. The stubble had been there to begin with, but now the shadow of a budding neck beard was now showing. He hadn't shaved in a few days. It wasn't all that peculiar, but something about the couple told Bev that these weren't the kind of people who let hygiene go unattended. It was like the thing in the photo, not like the others. As she studied their faces, she noticed that they both looked exhausted, like they hadn't slept much. The final observation she made was that they never moved from those seats. When they did shift in place or push food around on their plates, their movements were subtle, almost careful. It became almost irritating for Bev. At first, she'd enjoyed daydreaming about what their world must be like, but now the show was becoming a bore. She moved the chair back to its spot on the other side of the room and ignored them as best she could for the rest of her shift. But when she returned for the 4th and 5th night that week, she found them there still, staring at each other and never moving. Saturday and Sunday she had off, but her mind was completely occupied by that couple across the way. It bothered Bev so much that Monday morning she decided to do a little detective work. She didn't have names to go on, so she went about finding them out. She made calls, did some internet searches, even sorted through city and county records to get any information that she could. It took her most of the day, but she finally found something. The penthouse on the 42nd floor on the left-hand wing belonged to a man named Doug Allen. He was some sort of financial wizard and had obtained an enormous amount of wealth day trading. From what Bev could tell, he'd never been married. Must be a girlfriend, she thought. But then she called the front desk of the building the penthouse was in and discovered that Mr. Allen hadn't used his personal entry sensor or code in over a month. When she went in to clean the apartment that night, they were there again, sitting by the window, looking like a set of puppets. It was too much for Bev. She was too invested. She made her way across to their building and waited outside until a stranger walked in, walking in behind them and onto the elevator as if she belonged. Thankfully, the ladies at reception were fully engaged in a conversation about the latest episode of Yellowstone and hadn't noticed. When she arrived on the 42nd floor, she found herself in a hallway that offered only 4 options. 1 penthouse door for each wing of the building. She approached their door and immediately noticed the "Do Not Disturb" placard that hung beside it. She was so nervous, she was shaking. But this couple had completely polluted her days and nights. She had to know what was going on if she ever wanted to get back to reality. She didn't know what she would say when they answered, but she decided she would figure it out as she went. She knocked once, with the intention of doing it a second and third time, but when her knuckles connected with the door, it inched open slightly. It hadn't been properly latched. She looked at the opening for over a minute, trying to decide what to do. Clearly, they hadn't heard the knock, as no one came to the door to confront her. Surprising even to herself, she was actually considering letting herself in just enough to get a glimpse. She decided against the idea initially, but as she reached for the knob to close the door, she couldn't help herself. She shifted it open a little further, just enough to see inside. There was a small table in the center, and on the top were dozens of photos and documents. She'd come this far. She needed something to satisfy her insatiable interest. She approached the table and began to peruse the contents. The photos were all of the couple in the window, but the images were all from afar, as if whoever had taken them had done so without their knowledge. Bev's stomach started to turn as she read through the documents. Every one a piece of evidence. Evidence of an affair. It wasn't the affair itself that unsettled her. It was the fact that someone had collected evidence of it and had compiled it right here in the home of the man involved. She set the papers down and began to take steps backward as quietly as she could. But a noise behind her forced her to a complete stop. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Bev was frozen, the fear infiltrating every cell. She was caught. But that wasn't what frightened her. It was what she had walked into. She turned slowly, being careful to control her movements. As she did, she found herself face to face with the barrel of a pistol. The man holding it was calm, but in a way, perplexed. Like he wasn't sure exactly what to do with this discovery. "I'm sorry," she started to say. What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. I cleaned the apartment across the street, and She couldn't find the words, and any she did came out mumbled through her now shaking lips. She'd never seen a gun in person before, much less had one trained on her face. She couldn't think, and she could hardly breathe. He raised his free hand and rubbed his forehead as if working through a complicated mathematical equation. "Move," he said. "What?" "I said move. Into the dining room," he said, waving the gun in the direction she was to go. She did as she was told, inadvertently holding her hands in the air like she was under arrest. She knew it was silly. She would have felt much better if a police officer were detaining her versus what she was currently experiencing. As she emerged into the dining room, the couple she'd been watching for over a week came into view. They had to hear her enter, but they didn't dare move, and Bev believed she already knew why. "Douglas, Denise, we have an unexpected guest," he said. Still, they didn't move. Bev waited for a verbal confirmation that they were even alive. But then she saw the woman he'd called Denise's throat catch slightly as she fought to control her breathing. "I think introductions are in order. Why don't you go first?" he said, poking Bev in the back with the gun. I'm Bev Thomas. I just clean the apartment across the street. Perhaps you'd like to tell us exactly why you've intruded upon our evening of wonders and romance. Bev Thomas. I noticed them having dinner in the same spot all last week, and You were nosy, the man said, finishing her sentence. I was concerned. You didn't mean what? To break into this apartment? To impose somewhere you weren't welcome? But you did it anyway, didn't you? Bev Thomas. You know what, though? That's okay. You see, you and I are a lot alike. Curious. You were curious about this beautiful couple. So was I. You can imagine just how curious I was when I discovered that my wife of 15 years was having an affair with a wealthier, more attractive, and apparently more adventurous man. Bev didn't know what to say. Her fears were being confirmed, but that didn't bring her a single ounce of relief. For once, she wished she'd been wrong. Since they can't answer for themselves, allow me to complete the introductions. Douglas Allen, my wife's new lover. My darling wife, Denise. As for me, my name is about as important as our marriage was to my whore of a wife. Again, Bev stayed quiet. You must be wondering what exactly you happened upon tonight. Bev Thomas, let me illuminate you. You see, I have been tracking this forbidden love affair for over 2.5 years. Every meetup, every email, every middle-of-the-night phone call that my wife took from the downstairs bathroom as if I wouldn't hear. Everything. I was so moved by the greatest love story ever told that I figured, why not recreate it? Let the lovebirds live through it all one more time. We've been at it for weeks, Bev. Day and night. Every dinner date, every intimate conversation, every single moment of sexual engagement. All of it on replay, like a show on Broadway. The obvious difference is an audience of only one to enjoy it, he said, referring to himself. She doesn't have anything to do with this, Mike. Just let her leave. Denise's sudden outburst startled Bev so much that she almost jumped. The woman in the window had finally broken her silence. The man called Mike was still behind her, so Bev couldn't see his face. Even so, she could feel the anger radiating off him like heat from a bonfire. What is the rule, Denise? What is the fucking rule? She didn't respond, nor did she look away from Doug Allen. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes told the story all on their own. It was clear to Bev that Denise was overrun with fear. She'd messed up, and she knew it. Bev flinched as Mike's footsteps met her ears. He moved around her, making his way toward Denise, slowly and methodically, like a hungry tiger closing in on a wounded antelope. "I asked you a question," he said calmly as he arrived at the table. Again, she refused to answer. Mike sighed heavily and pulled something from his pocket. Before it registered what he had retrieved, the blade of the folding knife had flipped open and had been driven through Doug's hand, nailing it to the tabletop. Doug screamed out in pain, and Denise did the same. All the fear, anger, and misery exploding out of her. "Look what you made me do, you whore. You worthless bitch. You couldn't follow a simple set of fucking rules. Don't break character. Ever. You've ruined the entire sequence." When he was done, he collected himself and turned back to Bev. She expected he was about to explain the rules of engagement in this little game he'd created. But he stopped realizing what he had done. Years of tracking, months of planning, weeks of playing out his fantasy of revenge, and he'd never made a mistake. Until now. He turned back around as quickly as he could, but it was too late. Denise had already pulled the knife from Doug's hand. As his front side became exposed, she drove the knife deep into his chest. He gasped and began to stumble backwards. She followed him onto the floor, where she pulled the blade out and then stuck it in again. Then again, and again. Doug nursed his wounded hand, and Bev watched, frozen in time, as the slaughter ensued. When she no longer had the strength to pull the knife out, and Mike was fighting for his last few breaths, she moved up to his head and whispered something in his ear. His eyes went wide, then slowly shut, as the final bit of life departed from his body. What happened next was a whirlwind of police sirens, flashing lights, EMTs, and crime scene technicians. People in uniform taking Bev's statement again and again. Paramedics checking her for injuries, the flash of cameras as evidence was documented and collected inside the penthouse. She couldn't bring herself to say much of anything, but she hung on every word as Doug and Denise detailed what they had been through while captives of a madman, driven to the edge of sanity by pure rage and jealousy. When the police had finished their questions, and just before the pair were swept off by an ambulance to receive further medical attention at the hospital, Bev had time to ask one single question. She approached the back of the ambulance and looked up into Denise's eyes. "There is so much I don't understand. I'm glad you're both okay. But what did you say to him?" At the end, Denise smiled to herself, like she was about to reveal a childhood secret she'd always promised to take to the grave. She leaned down close so that she could whisper and still be audible. "I told him the truth, that Doug and I knew he was following us for months, and we kept at it anyways. I told him that it made it that much more exciting that he was seeing everything we were doing, and it just made us want to do it that much more. I told him that, and I told him that the only thing better than Doug and I tearing into each other with him knowing was doing it all over again in front of his pathetic face. Before she could say anything more, the paramedics came and secured the doors. Bev watched, speechless, as the ambulance pulled away. Since she didn't have any injuries, she didn't need to go to the hospital. Instead, she went back to the apartment she was supposed to be cleaning. Lost in thought, she wandered over to the window, looking up to an empty table in the penthouse across the street, where she'd first seen the couple in the glass runaway bride. Hopping onto a random train in the middle of the night was not the best idea Elise ever had. Not her worst, but a close second to when she was 13 and slept in the library overnight, only to wake up surrounded by cleaning pixies, surrounded by luggage and the smell of old clothes. She shifts her legs to avoid having them fall asleep before the train reaches the next stop. In other carts, there are no doubt people dining and laughing with glasses of champagne in their hands. She wishes she could join them in their revelry, but leaving her hiding space in a torn, dirt-stained wedding dress won't bring her the right sort of attention. Elise only wanted to be sure that no one had altered it without her knowledge, like her mother-in-law-to-be threatened to do when she failed to convince her to wear her gaudy dress from her own wedding. She didn't expect to hear screaming from the adjacent room when she tested how it fit. Glass bottles filled with wine for the guests breaking against the adjoining walls, the cries only stopping at the sound of a sickening thud. Her groom's voice only relieved her for a moment before she heard it discuss where to dispose of the body. She acted on instinct, opening a window and running until she found the train ready to depart. Tears come unbidden after what feels like centuries, thinking of only escape and surviving. Her plans of marrying the man of her dreams are now as broken as her heart. Her eyes grow heavy after her sorrow drains her of tears that further stained her once beautiful white gown. Not even the pain in her blooded feet could keep her awake as adrenaline faded from her body, replaced with exhaustion. Time passes her by as she slept, leaving her ignorant to the moment when the train stops and she's no longer alone. Someone large and strong grabs her, pulling her forward to the point where she nearly falls. Despite her panicked cries, Elise is dragged across the floor, her body already sore from her escape, her limbs unable to move from the mixture of fear and defeat. This is it, my end. They'll take me back to the estate, if not the chapel. My murderous groom will say I'm just a frightened bride with cold feet. And then it will be my body buried somewhere unknown. No one will know I'm missing until I'm nothing but bones. They take her into a train cart filled with people in fancy clothes, tossing her into an empty booth, her head falling against the window, exposing the darkness she used to cover her escape. She doesn't recognize the area behind the glass. Nothing but trees with no sign of human influence. Despite the throbbing in her skull, Elise turns her head to the gawking crowd staring back at her in confusion and horror, their meal interrupted by her unexpected entrance. Only a lone man in a trench coat and wide-brimmed hat has a neutral expression when looking at her. "Is this everyone?" the man asks a uniformed man, the one she assumes brought her here. "Yes, sir. All the passengers are accounted for, and our stowaway." "Any sign of the necklace?" "No, sir." The man in the trench coat sighs in frustration. Elise shrinks into herself as the eyes surrounding her seem to search through her soul. "Who is she?" one whispers. "I don't know. I don't recognize her." "Wait, isn't there a wedding this morning? The Von Gray and Carlyle families, right? It can't be Elise Carlyle. She wouldn't be caught dead in such a state. Besides, why would she be running from her own wedding? They've known each other for years." Elise opens her mouth to explain everything, yet no words would come. Try as she might, the only sound she can make is a strangled cry. The man in the trench coat walks down the small path separating the row of booths, hands behind his back in thought. Everyone else remains where they are, their panicked whispers filling the small space with dread. "Detective, what are your plans?" someone asks. "I already have the train staff searching for the missing jewelry. The conductor is aware of this, and I've informed him to keep the train here until the necklace is found. If the thief wishes to reach Bridgeway, they will have to confess. Otherwise, we'll wait until the local police arrive to interrogate everyone." The chatter rises to frustrated protests. The person who dismissed her identity, a middle-aged woman with a large hat decorated with silk flowers, rose from her seat. "This is preposterous. I have somewhere to be, and being fashionably late isn't an option. If I'm not in the pews at the chapel with the other guests, when the bride walks down the aisle, the shame will ruin my reputation and standing in society." The detective ignores her outburst to write down something in his notepad. The older woman, realizing her declaration failed to sway the detective, reaches for her purse, opening it and searching until she pulls out a hand mirror. Its metal frame shaped into soft vines with glowing stones for flowers. Elise recognizes her seeing mirror as the work of a famous artisan in Bridgeway, the place where the chapel awaited her, and what she once thought would be the start of her new life. The older woman leaves her seat, not making any effort to hide what she's doing from the detective or the other passengers. If he suspects something, he doesn't show it as he eyes the passengers. The older woman finds a small corner with an empty booth, turning her back to the others as she presses the flowers and whispers a few words to connect with another seeing mirror. Elise can only see a flash of light from the mirror before the detective takes position across from her, blocking her view. Care to answer some questions? Elise tries once more to speak. And again, only a sound of pain escapes her lips. The detective's hardened expression shifts slightly as she pretends to write with an invisible pen on the table. Here, you can use mine. Now, first question, how did you get on the train? Elise writes down a few words. Open door. Got on before the train left. And why did you get on the train? Running away. Heard a murder. Groom and groomsmen. Don't know who was killed, but was scared. Your future husband and his groomsmen killed someone? What else can you tell me? Screaming, fighting, glass shattering, silence. Then groom says they need to hide the body. The detective continues to ask her questions, Elise responding with what few words she could conjure from her mind, without fear settling in. When the interrogation is over, Elise feels hollow, yet despondent. The detective thanks her for her cooperation, moving on to a passenger in a heavy wool coat. Yet, before he could ask a single question, two things happen at the same time. A uniformed woman enters the train with a necklace of flawless diamonds in hand, and the older woman throws her mirror against the wall. The detective springs into action, reaching the staff member in seconds. The older woman turns her attention to Elise, her expression changing from rage to concern. She approaches Elise while the others are distracted with the reveal of the missing necklace. You're Elise, aren't you? Elise nods, hope rising in her chest. Oh, I should have known. The older woman returns to her snobbish attitude in an instant. Of course, when I connected to my cousin's mirror, she was certain nothing was the matter, or she would have told me. With this theft of your wedding gift, I worried I would be late, so naturally, I had to give the bride a proper blessing to alleviate the results of my tardiness. And when the mirror was given to the bride, you won't believe who I saw. Did the Von Gray family servants think so little of me that I wouldn't recognize one of them from the times I've spent with their mistress? The dress wasn't even embroidered. She pats Elise's head as if she were a child, while it swirls in confusion at the news. Poor thing, forced to play in a foolish man's game. No doubt he believed the veil would hide her identity until the priest declared them husband and wife. No matter, everything will be revealed soon enough. I told my cousin to inform your mother that your groom has a convoluted plan to wed another woman of a lowly station. Once we reach Bridgeway, all will be well. Elise is not certain the older woman's assumptions are correct, but the thought of salvation is enough to set her mind at ease. Once the train resumes its journey, the passengers return to a modicum of normalcy, talking about mundane things as they ate their now cold food. Elise's own appetite returned as she dined with the older woman, as she spoke of the scandal that will erupt once the truth is revealed. With time, the wheels break upon the rails as the station of Bridgeway comes into view. The familiar face of her mother, eyes stained with sorrow, light up once Elise races onto the platform into her warm embrace. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to do it. The words echoed in my mind as I stood there in the dark, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the sound of the storm outside. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain hammered against the windows. It was a night that felt like it was made for horrors. But the real terror, my terror, was already inside. I stared down at his body, lying in a pool of crimson that seemed to stretch out, devouring everything it touched. His once bright eyes, filled with laughter and warmth, were now dull and empty. His chest was still, the rhythmic rise and fall I had come to know so well, now forever silenced. It wasn't supposed to end like this. We weren't supposed to be here. I never meant for any of it to happen. The night had started out differently. We were celebrating. Well, I thought we were. It had been a long week for both of us. John had been working late at the office, and I'd been buried in a dozen little tasks at home. We barely saw each other, only passing like two ships in the night. So, when he suggested dinner out, I'd jumped at the chance to spend some quality time together. We went to that little Italian restaurant we loved, the one tucked away in the corner of the city, with the flickering candles and soft music. Everything felt just right. The kind of evening that reminded me of why we had fallen in love in the first place. However, as the night wore on, something changed. Something was off. Something I couldn't explain. It started when John leaned in and rested his hand on mine across the table. He smiled, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't figure out. Was it uncertainty? Maybe it was just me. I hadn't been sleeping well at all. We had building tension between us for months. First, it was little things that were simple to overlook, but now they were impossible to ignore. "What's on your mind?" I asked, trying to smile back. John sighed and leaned back in his chair, looking down at his plate for a moment before meeting my gaze again. "It's nothing, really. Just work stuff. You know how it is." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed him. I never did. When John didn't want to talk about something, he wouldn't. But then, as we left the restaurant, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. I couldn't help but smile, hoping that maybe he was attempting to rekindle the spark we'd once had. He'd always been good at that, surprising me and keeping the romance alive in his own way. "What's this?" I asked, teasing him as I took the box from his hand. "Just a little something," he said, his voice sounding odd. I opened it, and inside was a ring. But it wasn't a shiny, sparkly diamond ring that you'd expect as a romantic gesture. This ring was old and looked like perhaps it had been passed down through generations. The ring was tarnished, and the stone had a crack in it. "It's beautiful," I said, though I wasn't sure what I meant by that. There was something that didn't sit right in my gut. "Do you like it?" he asked. I nodded, but found it difficult to smile genuinely. I felt chills all over. "Where did you get this?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Something felt wrong. John didn't answer right away. His eyes had shifted, almost like he was hiding something. He looked away before attempting to look at me again. "It's been in the family for years. It's special. I thought you would like it." "Special," I echoed. My fingers traced the ring's surface, and it was cold, even colder than metal typically is. I could feel the tension between us. It wasn't just about the ring. It was deeper than that. Something had been building for a long time. John as acting odd, avoiding my eyes, trembling as he reached for the car keys. But we didn't say anything more on the drive home. It was quiet, other than the rain that had started. Everything was blurred by the water running down the windshield. The wipers were thankfully filling our silence. When we arrived home, we went through our routine of getting ready for bed. John took a long shower while I tried to relax in the living room, but my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept thinking about the ring, about the way it felt in my hands, and John's strange behavior. When John finally came out of the shower, he walked past me without saying a word, heading toward the bedroom. "John, wait," I said, my voice shaking. "Is something going on? Something you're not telling me?" He stood at the bedroom door and turned to me. He stared for a moment, with just a blank expression. Then he sighed and walked toward me. He sat down on the couch next to me. "I've been thinking a lot," he began with a low voice. "About us. About everything." My heart thudded loudly as I waited for him to continue. "I think we're drifting, Sarah," he said, his words immediately taking my breath away. "I just don't know if we can fix this anymore. We've been drifting for months. It felt like the world was tilting. I couldn't breathe. "Drifting?" I whispered. "What do you mean? We're fine. We're busy. We're just busy, that's all. We can fix this and make it work." John shook his head. "I'm not sure anymore. We've both been pretending. We're just not the same people we were when we got married, Sarah. I'm tired. Really tired. I don't think I can keep pretending." I wanted to cry, to scream, but I couldn't. All I could to do was sit there, trying to figure out what he meant. None of it made sense. I'd been trying so hard to hold everything together, and now it felt like It was slipping through my grasp. Before I could say anything, he stood up and went to the bedroom. I heard the rustle of sheets and the soft thud of him getting into bed. I didn't know what to do or say. I sat there for a long time, what felt like hours. The silence was killing me. Finally, I was unable to stand the distance between us any longer, so I went to the bedroom and stood in the doorway. John was lying on his side, with his back facing me. I couldn't see his face, but I felt the coldness coming from him. "John," I whispered. He didn't respond. "I can't lose you," I said, my voice cracking. "Please don't give up. We can work through this. I'll do anything." Still, there was no answer. Something inside me snapped. I was frustrated and scared of losing him. I didn't know what came over me, but I crossed the bedroom, grabbed the ring from the nightstand, and chucked it across the room. The silence was broken by the ring hitting the wall. "Do you really think this is going to fix everything?" I shouted. "This stupid ring? A symbol of what? The lies we've been telling each other?" Finally, John turned to face me, his eyes wide. Was he angry? Scared? But before he could say anything, I saw it, something sharp and dangerous glinting in his hand. He had a knife. I didn't see the motion coming. 1 minute, I was standing there, shouting at him. And the next, I felt the cold metal press into my side. It wasn't deep, but it stopped me in my tracks, clutching my wound. "John," I whispered, my voice trembling with disbelief. "What are you?" But he didn't answer. He didn't move. I was frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. My breath came in shallow gasps. In a panic, I grabbed at the knife, trying to push it away. I stumbled back, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what happened. Then, in a blur of motion, I grabbed the nearest thing I could get, a heavy glass vase, and swung it at him. It hit him in the face, and he staggered backward, the knife slipping from his hand. But it wasn't enough to stop him. He lunged toward me, and I fought back with everything I had. My mind was full of fear, confusion, and anger. I didn't know what I was doing anymore, or how it happened. All I knew was I needed to protect myself. The next thing I knew, John was on the floor. His body was crumpled, his unblinking wide eyes staring up at me. His chest no longer rose and fell. I didn't mean to do it. Epitaphs to Elsa. September 8th, 1986. Elsa, it's just me now. Just me and the waves. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe I just want to believe you can still hear me. The boat is quiet without you. I keep thinking I'll hear your footsteps in the cabin. That soft little shuffle you made when you didn't want to wake me. But I know better. You're not here. And I did that. I miss you. God, I miss you. You never should have stayed with me, Elsa. You should have let me rot the moment you saw what I was becoming. But you never ran. Not when the hunger started. Not when my skin came apart. Not even when you saw what I would do. You should have run. You saw it. That thing inside me. It doesn't care what I want. It doesn't care how much I fight. I don't want to remember them, but I do. That old fisherman just happened to be in the wrong place. He looked me in the eye and knew something was wrong. I saw the way his face tightened before he turned to run. It didn't matter. It happened too fast, and he split apart like a red, stained driftwood after they reached him. I didn't want to hurt any of them, but you know what I am, and you know the worst of it. The only thing in this world that can kill me: water. The sea, the rain, even a goddamn puddle. You said it was poetic, that all we needed to do was wash the sins away, and that would be it. I wish I could tell you I'm sorry and have that be enough, but I know that it isn't. My mind is slipping. I thought I heard you earlier, but when I turned, there was nothing but the water. I can feel it starting to itch beneath my skin again. I must attend to its needs until morning. Leon, September 2nd, 1986. Leon, I woke up from a terrible dream and could not tell where I was, nor even when I was. For the longest time, I thought I was still in our cabin, with the warped floorboards and the leaky window that rattled in the wind. I thought I heard the waves outside, but they were too far away. I sat up and reached for something, but there was nothing. No warmth, no weight, just a hollow feeling. And then I remembered you. I used to think I could live in your shadow forever, that it was enough to stand between you and the world, to hide what you had become from those who would have tried to take you from me. But you never really belonged to me. You belonged to it. I fed you. I kept you safe and suffered with you. And still, in the end, you left me here. I think I was angry. I still might be. You say you miss me, that you never wanted this, that you never wanted them to die. I believe you. You don't have to look for me. I'm already here. Elsa, September 9th, 1986. Afternoon. Elsa, this isn't real. You're not real. I don't know what kind of madness has settled into my head, but I know what I saw. There is no one on this boat. I searched every inch, Elsa. Every cabin, every hatch. There aren't even footprints, not a single sign that anyone but me has been here. And yet, your letter was waiting for me in the same place I left mine, in your handwriting. Exactly your handwriting. Where are you? What do you mean you're already here? No. No, I won't do this. I won't chase ghosts. I won't let my brain rot on the deck of this damned boat, waiting for another letter to appear out of nowhere. Not when I can still feel the scars where it broke through my skin last night. Raw, burning, until I fed it with something I brought on board. I'll leave this here for you, if only to prove to myself that I'm not completely unraveling. Maybe a drink will help. Leon, September 2nd, 1986. Leon, I can't see the sunset the way I used to, but I know you can. You always liked that time of day best, as the light faded over the horizon, the world softening. I remember watching you, even after you changed. I wanted to believe that if I just held on to you long enough, you would come back to me. I thought love could keep you human. Do you remember what you are, who you have become? You remember the killing, but not the hunger. Do you recall what happened before I died? You used to say that the sea was patient, that it takes its time, wearing things down piece by piece until all that's left is what it chooses to keep. You think you're drifting, waiting to decide how this ends. But you're wrong. You will never truly die here. Not unless you sink. Elsa, September 9th, 1986. Sunset. Elsa, you dated your letter September 2nd. I don't know what kind of joke this is. If this is my mind breaking, or if this is actually you, or if there's no difference anymore. But I know that date. That's the day after you died, and I killed you. I need to say it. I need to write it. I need to stop hiding from it like a coward, because I remember now. I remember the way you looked at me when you realized what I had become. I remember you tried to save me, tried to save them. I remember the knife in your hand and the tears in your eyes when you begged me to just let it end. I remember that you weren't fast enough. I remember the way you screamed when I touched you, the way your body turned to ruin beneath my hands, the way you stopped fighting when you knew there was nothing left to fight for. I remember the moment you stopped being afraid of me. I remember everything, Elsa, and you were right. I am not human anymore. You said the sea is patient, but so is the thing inside me. It waits. It watches. It lets me write these letters like I still have control, like I still have a choice, like I could ever truly leave this boat. But I know better now. I know what I have to do. This time, I'll finish what you started. Leon, September 3rd, 1986. Leon, you stayed up waiting for me, didn't you? You always used to do that when we were kids. You'd sit up by the window, refusing to sleep, until I came back inside. I used to think it was sweet. Now I think maybe you always knew, even before you became this, that you were meant to be alone. I see now that I should have left you alone too, but I stayed and cleaned up after you, wiped their blood from your body, covered for you. Every time that thing leaked out from beneath your skin, I thought I was protecting you. but I wasn't. I was keeping the monster alive. And that's why you killed me. You can stop pretending now. You remember everything. I tried to end it before it could spread. I would have done it if you'd let me. You should have let me. Instead, you turned on me. You let it break me apart, like all the others. You wept and rocked what was left of me, like I was still yours. Like I hadn't just died in your arms, and in some twisted way, maybe I am still yours. But that doesn't matter now. You have one thing left to do. Come visit me where I am now. That is the right thing to do. Love, your sister, Elsa. September 10th, 1986. Elsa, yes, you know me best. I stayed up all night waiting for you. I watched the page, scotch in hand, eyes burning. I wouldn't sleep. Not until I caught you in the act and saw how you did it. But I must have drifted off, because when I opened my eyes, your letter was there, and your last words shattered me. You were my sister, my only sister. You were always there, watching over me, covering for me. You loved me when no one else could, and God damn it, Elsa, I loved you too. We were alone, together, for so long. Maybe that's why it happened. Maybe that's how we fell into something we shouldn't have. Maybe that's why you still stayed after I changed. Why you still brought them to me. I never asked you to do it, but I never stopped you either. And now I see why. Because I was happy. I was happy when you fed me. I was happy when you lied for me, covered for me, hid me. I was happy when you were the only one in the world who saw me for what I was, and still stayed. And I thought that was enough, but you knew better. You knew that as long as I was out here, I wasn't just Leon. I was it. I was the thing that wears me, the thing that spreads itself through my hands, my mouth, my breath. You knew what had to be done, and I stopped you. And now I have to finish it. Elsa, after reading your last letter, I tried something. I let the water touch me. Just a few drops at first. Just enough to test what you told me. And I watched my own skin blacken. I watched it peel away, curl like burnt paper, dust scattering into nothing. And for the first time since that night, I felt something leave me. Something I can never let return. I know what I have to do now. I should have done it a long time ago. I'll see you soon, Elsa. Leon. September 15th, 1986. Radio transmission. U.S. Coast Guard Channel. So 8:42 a.m. EST. Yeah, this is Patrol 6 out of Newport, responding to a distress call. We've located the vessel approximately 17 nautical miles offshore, drifting. No signs of life on board. Copy. Unintelligible reply. Copy. Yeah. We're boarding now. The name on the hull matches the missing vessel reported out of Washington last week. Belonged to one Leon Mathers. Yeah. The suspect in the Olympia killings. Still no sign of a body. Over. Hang on. Christ. Do you smell that? Muffled voices. Jesus. It's in the fog, thick as hell. The air, God, it's like it's sticking to my skin. Unintelligible reply. Boats in rough shape. Some flooding in the lower cabin, but no visible damage. No sign of struggle. Looks like it's just been out here drifting. There's a letter on the table. Several, actually. We've got personal effects. ID matching Mathers. A sudden, sharp breath. Shit. No body. No trace of him. But we found part of someone. It's a leg. Left, severed mid-thigh. Not clean. No ID yet. Yeah, we'll check the water next. Shuffling, movement. The soft slosh of waves lapping against the hull. Oh, hell. Sir, you need to hear this part. Listen, there's something in the water. Around the boat. Not oil, not debris. It's dark. Black as ink. Looks like it's mixed with the waves, but it's thicker. Like it's trying to hold its shape. God, it's moving. No, I'm serious. It's bubbling. It's a pause, a quick breath. Alive. Chunks in it. Carbon, maybe. But some of them, another sharp breath. Some of them are floating against the current. A quiet, shaken voice in the background. It's watching. Sir? Orders? Unintelligible reply. Collecting samples now. We'll tow the vessel back to port. End transmission. See you soon, Claire. You didn't think you could just leave, did you? I've always known where you were. That little bus station in the city. That motel with the flickering sign on the side of the motorway. I was watching you, even then. How you clutch your bag when you sleep. How you leave the TV on static to drown out the sound of your thoughts. You're clever, slippery, but not clever enough. I have to admit, you know how to cover your tracks, but you should know that you can't shake off your own tail. You're not running away from me. You're running toward me. You'll see soon. Sweet dreams. Wow. Creepy. Not sure how you got this address, but congrats, I guess. Nice to know I'm living rent-free in your head. FYI, the bus station smelled like pee, and the motel had roaches. So maybe put your stalking budget toward better accommodations next time. Only, of course, if there is a next time. But I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. Also, if you're going to kill me, maybe don't warn me first. That's kind of, I don't know, sloppy. Anyway, I've got to go. I'm going on a hitchhiking date with a guy named Dave. He says he's got a van. Don't worry, I checked, and there's no candy. Best, Claire. And son. Dave has a record. 2 assaults. 1 missing person case. You're not as sharp as you think. Do you know how easy it would be for me to get to you? To pull you from that van before Dave even knows what's happening? The door's unlocked. Sleep tight. Very funny. Except you can't be outside because I'm writing this from the bathroom at a gas station. And I'm pretty sure the only person outside is the clerk on his smoke break. Unless you've taken up vaping? Mint flavored, I hope. But seriously, do you actually think this whole mysterious stalker act is working? Because from where I'm sitting, on a suspiciously sticky toilet seat, by the way, you owe me for that. You sound kind of desperate, following me across 3 states, tracking my every move, writing me these cryptic little notes like some kind of B-list Bond villain. Feels like a lot of effort for someone who insists they're the one in control. And if you know so much, if you've been watching me this whole time, tell me this. Why am I running? Seriously. Enlighten me. You should know why, unless you don't, which would mean you're not half as smart as you think you are. I need to stop writing now, since someone's knocking on the stall door, and I don't feel like explaining why I've been loitering in the bathroom with a notepad. Best, Claire, you're running because you're scared, but not of me. The thing you're running from is already in the room with you. Turn around. I think you've got this whole dynamic twisted. You think I'm scared of you? Cute. You've been following me, sure. But have you noticed the trail of bodies in my wake? Dave made it exactly 27 miles before he swerved into a ditch. Poor guy. Guess he shouldn't have tried to pull that knife. The clerk at the gas station. You'll see his face on the news soon. Well, most of it. So yeah, maybe I'm running, but not from you. You're not hunting me. I'm hunting you. See you soon. Interesting. You always were a quick study. I underestimated you. My mistake. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not hunting you anymore. I'm inviting you. There's a cabin in the woods, just outside the circus. Red door, broken window. I'll leave the door unlocked. If you're as brave as you think you are, come find me. Or maybe I'll find you first. By circa, you mean the festival extravaganza, right? Cute. I'll bring wine, and maybe a shovel. See you soon, Claire. I knew you'd come. I saw you the second you stepped into the woods. That red jacket of yours stands out in the dark like a beacon. You really should have chosen something less noticeable, or maybe you wanted me to see you. Either way, you're here now. I left a present for you. I thought I might as well give you a chance. The knife I pinned this letter down with is all yours. I trust you know how to use it. Do you feel it? The cold sinking into your bones? The silence pressing down on you? That sound behind you? The snap of a branch that wasn't an animal. You've been so clever up to this point, so slippery, so sharp. But even the smartest prey makes a mistake eventually, and you've just made yours. Don't bother running. I'm already behind you. You're right. I felt you the moment I crossed the tree line. I knew you were there. I could almost hear your breathing. Shallow, controlled, waiting. But you made a mistake, too. You let me get too close. I know it's rude. But I'm going to have to return you kind gift. A girl can't have too many of a good thing, or it gets boring. I felt the heat of your breath on the back of my neck, and I smiled, because I'm not scared of you anymore. Not that I ever was, and you'll never get the chance to to write me again. Clever girl, but not clever enough. See you soon. At Incident Report, Missing Person. Claire Marie Jenkins. Location: isolated cabin, festival extravaganza. Details: the cabin was found empty upon arrival. Blood splatters were present, but no bodies recovered. Signs of struggle. One broken window. Unidentified footprints lead into the woods. No return tracks. A single sheet of paper was discovered, pinned to the cabin wall with a knife. It read, "Not yet. Claire is presently missing at time of report. Background checks show that she must have changed her identity. Or she didn't have any family, immediate or extended. Case remains open. Nature or nurture? Sensitive content. Serial killers. Nature or nurture? That is the question. Before today, I thought I knew where I stood on the issue. But now, friends, I am not really sure what to think. To give you context, a few weeks ago, after Mother passed, I was finally able to clean out her bedroom. The medical equipment was, of course, quite pristine, but the smell and debris from her glacial demise was simply overwhelming, and it took me days to clear paths in the room. I found the letters in her closet. Even now, it takes me a moment to adjust myself to the mental impact of those pages and pages of her precise Palmer script, describing in the most flowery of language a lifetime of barely requited love. The only mention of me in any of the letters was it, as in, I can get rid of it. My cold, sterile, demanding mother spent decades writing the most passionate and absolutely painful to read, lurid letters to her one-time lover who never once responded. The wrinkled envelopes I found in an old Avon perfume box, each bearing a scarlet ink, "Return to sender," returned from the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it just preyed on my mind, and I could not get the thoughts out of my head until I took action. Perhaps you may relate to this, perhaps not. So, friends, I eventually found myself in somewhat of a fugue state, an hour into the 2-hour drive up north from Dallas on 75 to US 69, which leads to Penitentiary Street, and then to the Big Mac, a maximum security prison once known for its annual prisoner rodeo, now infamous for its terrible conditions, riots, and death row prisoners, one of whom could be my father. To visit anyone at the Big Mac takes some time. Visiting someone like Louis Landry Reese takes time, and one's absolute forbearance for the most intimately probing of questions and fingers. It wouldn't surprise me if you hadn't heard of Louis Landry Reese and his swath of known and unknown rapes, kidnappings, and killings. But you will be able to find all you want with a few searches. Maybe you know exactly who he is. Driving under the peeling white arched grille Oklahoma State Penitentiary sign, buttressed by decaying, similarly painted white bricks pillars. I pulled into one of the few designated parking spots for Big Mac visitors. I turned off the Volvo's engine and sat for a moment, perhaps a bit longer than a moment, with my mind ticking to different thoughts about how maybe today I would finally learn who my father really was, about how Mother would never talk about him, about how she would punish me when I kept asking and asking, and about how Brandy, my old receptionist, would tease me about Volvos being only for short-haired women who shopped at Home Depot. After a bit, the rising sun. Visitors to the Big Mac must arrive very early. Warmed up the air in the car to the point my face began prickling with sweat, and I was brought back from my reminiscing. I opened the door, swung my legs out, and made my way to enter the prison. As I mentioned, the passage from our daily world to that of people such as Lewis Landry Reese is rife with probing exams, delays, and grunting guards who entertain themselves with snickering under the breath asides. In the Shawshankian depths of the Big Mac, the black and blue rayon bulk that was my escorting guard halted at metal door exactly like the dozen we had already passed. He turned back toward me and asked without much concern, "Are you sure?" It is true, friends. I am not a physically intimidating person. Not tall, not wide, not much hair, nor chin. With my decidedly pointed nose and very small teeth, Mother thought it the height of ironic hilarity that I chose the dental profession. A squealing mouse is what she called me, although, to be fair, I learned at a very young age that squealing, no matter how much pain or discomfort, only prolonged such experiences. So squealing is something I have not done in a very long time. I stood straight and focused on how I was a respected professional, how I would be walking out of this dank hellhole of sweating brick and would never ever return, while Lewis Landry Reese would only leave feet first. How I would finally find out the truth. "Open the door," I whispered. Greasy tendrils of hair leaked from his scalp, down his shiny face, onto pale, meaty forearms, creating a tangled and ripped curtain through which I could see a silver blue eye cutting from me to the closing door of the room and back to me. As the door shut, he lifted his head up, and I was absolutely shocked to see his sunken and caved face with a navel of puckered mouth. Lewis Landry Reese had no teeth, literally. Then I heard the strangest sound, like a dog choking and barking at the same time. It was me, laughing hysterically. Lewis Landry Reese did not appreciate my levity. Friends, not at all. He tried to stand, but the chains around his wrist went through a steel loop, bolted to the table, kept him stooped over as he shouted at me. The harsh, ratcheting sound of the chains sawing back and forth through the loop assaulted my ears almost as much as his gummy-mouthed curses. The whole episode lasted only a few moments before a phalanx of guards rushed into the room, with one picking me physically up and setting me outside. To be frank, I do not really remember much too clearly from that point. I numbly followed the uniform in front of me and fuzzily collected my belongings before staggering into the Oklahoma sun. I made my way to the Volvo and began the drive back to Dallas. The shrieked words of my father still ricocheting between my ears, and he was indeed my father. One look at his face and those colorless, watery blue eyes that were identical to my own left no doubt. At least to me. I think Louis Landry Reese thought so too, even though he screamed the most terrible things about Mother and how I was just a dentist and not like the others, which is why I was so stunned and really driving on remote control until I got back to Dallas and pulled off Harry Hines into my driveway. The implications of Louis Landry Reese knowing my occupation meant he knew of me. But what did he know about me? I was thinking this over as I went to the basement to check on Brandy. She had finally stopped trying to pull her wrists from the restraints, but it seemed she had really stopped doing much of anything. Even when I clicked the pliers together, she barely trembled. That was disappointing. But since Brandy was down to her last 3 teeth, 16, 24, and 41, it was probably time to discharge her and find my next patient. I tell you all this, friends, because contrary to the rantings of Louis Landry Reese, I am not just a dentist. I am the dentist. And Louis Landry Reese also said the others. So, I am posting my story on this dark website as a message in the bottle to see if maybe I have family, others like me, to ask, what do you think, nature or nurture? Lucid Dr. Mira Santos aligns her pen at a precise 90-degree angle to her notepad, then adjusts it to 89. Perfect precision matters. Her office presents an unbroken landscape of whites and grays, walls, furniture, even the spines of journals arranged by height on custom shelving. Her diplomas hang at measured intervals. Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins Fellowship, Stanford Neuropsychiatry. I keep having these dreams where pieces of myself are missing, Jamie Whitcomb explains, voice carrying an unsettling familiarity Mira can't place. Like someone tore pages from my story. She observes his hands as they animate his words. Index finger extended, thumb perpendicular. A gesture triggering a microsecond of déjà vu that she immediately classifies. Transient memory phenomenon. No clinical significance. Perhaps we could explore these gaps through guided imagery, she suggests, noting the clock. 2:37. I think my unconscious is getting tired of being ignored, Jamie says, meeting her eyes with unexpected directness. His fingers tap against his knee. Tap, tap, pause, tap. A rhythm that seems momentarily significant, then doesn't. You wrote something about this, actually. How the mind creates increasingly dramatic interventions when we persist in avoidance. Your work on trauma compartmentalization changed how I understand myself. Mira's hand pauses. Few patients research their therapists so thoroughly. She glances down and notices a blue smudge on her thumb that wasn't there moments ago. When not directly observed, it seems to shift slightly, like water finding its level. After Jamie leaves, she documents. Patient demonstrates unusual knowledge of practitioner's methodology. The words form in reassuring black ink. She categorizes the blue smudge. Stress-induced perceptual anomaly. Clinical terminology creates immediate distance. Safety through classification. Her calendar displays afternoon appointments with a precise rectangle marked personal reflection at 2:30 each day. Time methodically scheduled for not thinking about what happened. 300 days of structured avoidance. She notices blue ink spreading in tomorrow's reflection block. Jamie Whitcomb, second consultation. She has no memory of scheduling this. Dr. Chen appears in her doorway. Mira, you've scheduled during your personal time tomorrow. The patient required accommodation. She lies with clinical detachment. You haven't adjusted that time block in almost a year, he observes, eyes lingering on her hand, where the blue smudge seems to pulse with her heartbeat. Her apartment mirrors her professional space, meticulously organized in whites and grays. She moves efficiently through rooms systematically purged of memory. Each belonging serves logical purpose. Control through environmental precision. Her path includes a mathematically precise 60-degree turn at the hallway's end. Gaze sliding past the single disruption in her colorless sanctuary. A cerulean blue door she hasn't opened in 300 days. For a heartbeat, vanilla shampoo scent registers. Small fingers sticky with breakfast syrup. A child's laughter, like wind chimes. Pulse accelerates. Tachycardia, 97 beats per minute. Respiratory rate increased 18%. Diagnosis: acute stress response. Treatment: continued avoidance. She walks past, careful not to touch the blue. Mira prepares for Jamie's second session, straightening her already straight pens. The blue stain has spread overnight, now covering her palm entirely. She tugs her sleeve lower. Patient demonstrates unusual knowledge of practitioner's methodology, she writes. Possible prior envy. She stops. The words appear in blue ink despite her black pen. She selects another. Same result. Equipment. Malfunction. Statistically improbable. Perceptual anomaly. Equally unlikely. Classification. Inconclusive. When Jamie enters, The room temperature drops 3 degrees. Calibration error, surely. The clock's second hand stutters. Tick. Pause. Tick, tick. Stretching moments unnaturally. Mira's breath forms small clouds that hover before dissipating. I researched you, she says, professional tone brittle. Your contact information leads nowhere. Perhaps I don't exist within your acceptable parameters, Jamie replies, something shifting behind his eyes. His features seem unstable today. A 30-something stranger one moment, then briefly showing contours of a younger face. Isn't that your specialty, Dr. Santos? Creating parameters that exclude what hurts too much? The air carries a faint antiseptic smell. Hospital corridors, grief-saturated waiting rooms, olfactory hallucination. Unlikely, but not impossible. You've built your career helping others face what you avoid, Jamie says, fingers forming that distinctive gesture, index extended, thumb perpendicular. In your article, you wrote about integration, but your office calendar tells a different story. Her diploma wavers when not directly observed. Doctor of Medicine briefly becoming Mother Who Wasn't, before snapping back when she focuses on it. Do you believe in astronomy, Dr. Santos? Jamie asks, voice suddenly higher-pitched. That stars remember us even when clouds block our view? Even when we're gone? Mira's pen freezes. Mid-note. A child had asked her a nearly identical question once. Coincidence? Statistically impossible. We should focus on your experiences, she attempts, but her voice falters. Like you focus during your personal reflection blocks? His eyes shift color momentarily, from brown to startling blue. The time you carefully schedule for not remembering, the antiseptic smell intensifies. Her bookcase blurs at the edges, white shelves rippling like water, book spines dissolving into hospital corridor signs, small hand in hers, warm against her palm. Blue wool sweater with wooden buttons she'd helped fasten. Vanilla shampoo. Mira blinks rapidly. Classification: intrusive memory fragment. Treatment: compartmentalization. The clinical term disintegrates in her mind. You're diagnosing yourself in the third person, Jamie observes, his voice oscillating between adult articulation and childlike directness. Does Harvard teach doctors to hide inside words when feelings get too big? The pen in her hand turns liquid, blue ink flowing across her fingers in tiny rivulets that form star-like patterns on her skin. When Jamie leaves, or did he simply fade, Mira attempts to reorient. She aligns her pen perpendicular to her notepad, but blue ink pools beneath it, refusing containment. Dr. Chen enters, without knocking. The room temperature normalizes instantly, but blue stains remain across her notes, her desk, her hands. The Wilkins consultation, he says with unusual directness. They've requested another therapist. Said you seemed elsewhere. I maintained appropriate clinical distance, she recites. Like you maintain distance from the children's ward? His tone softens. 300 days, Mira. I saw you outside the memorial wall yesterday. He studies her, colleague and friend, visibly conflicted. Remember Elliot at the fundraiser concert? That Chopin nocturne we practiced for weeks? Him turning pages with that perfect timing? Chen's fingers mimic playing piano keys. When I asked how he knew exactly when, he said, "The music tells me," Mira finishes, throat constricting. It gets ready to need more space. Chen places a blue folder on her desk. You told Phillips to compartmentalize grief. That's not what you taught before. The patient demonstrated. The patient was mirroring your strategy. Chen interrupts gently. Look at your hands. The blue has spread past her wrists, pulsing with her heartbeat. That night, the blue door PULSES with its own tutha. Mira arrives for Jamie's third session to find him already seated. Today he wears a blue sweater with wooden buttons instead of his usual suit. Her office temperature has dropped 10 degrees overnight. Facility malfunction, she mutters, but her breath forms dense clouds. The second hand on her wall clock stutters. Tick, tick, stop, backward tick, then freezes at precisely 2:37. Your calendar has transformed, Jamie observes. Blue ink has spread across her appointment book, forming distinct patterns. The Big Dipper, Orion, constellations she once traced on a bedroom ceiling. Irregularity in the ink compu. The words disintegrate before she can complete them. Her diagnostic vocabulary suddenly foreign. Letters rearranging themselves, still trying to diagnose away what you feel? Jamie asks. His features shift. Adult one moment, then child's eyes, gazing from adult face, then small fingers emerging from suit sleeves. How's that working after 300 days? The antiseptic smell intensifies. Hospital-grade disinfectant, coffee from a nurse's station, vending machine cookies. Her cream walls ripple. Hospital corridor, green bleeding through like watercolors on wet paper. Patient exhibits acute dissoc. She can't complete the word. The pen trembles between her fingers as blue ink pools on the page, forming tiny rivulets that flow toward her like seeking things. You taught me about grounding techniques, Jamie says, his voice shifting higher. The hand gesture again. Index extended, thumb perpendicular. When things feel overwhelming, find 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch. I never taught. Mira stops. She never met Jamie before 300 days ago. Statistical impossibility. Logical incongruence. professional boundaries compromised. When things get scary, he continues, features now unmistakably childlike beneath adult bone structure. Find something solid to hold on to, like your hand when we crossed parking lots. Her bookcase dissolves completely, revealing hospital waiting area chairs. The leather beneath her fingertips becomes vinyl, cold, sterile. A water cooler gurgles in the corner where her ficus plant had been moments before. The clock face melts, numbers flowing into blue puddles. Her diplomas rearrange into memorial service programs. This represents functional. Clinical terminology evaporates mid-thought. Her desk transforms into the hospital admitting counter where she'd stood precisely 300 days ago. Still hiding inside Harvard vocabulary? Jamie's adult clothing now hangs from a child's frame. Blue sweater with sleeves rolled 6 times. Pants puddling around small sneakers. Elliot's face now fully visible, only his eyes retaining adult knowledge. Does categorizing grief really make it go away? VANILLASHAPOO. Apple detangler. Chocolate milk breath. This isn't Her hands convulse, sending her pen spinning across the floor. This cannot. The pen bleeds blue across linoleum, spreading toward her in tributary patterns that form exact replicas of the constellation drawings from Elliot's bedroom ceiling. Rain hammers against glass. Rhythmic squeak thump of wipers fighting deluge. Her phone vibrates against her ear. Dr. Chen's voice, tense with urgency. I understand this patient is in crisis, she hears herself say, but I'm driving with my son. Can I call you back in 5? Mommy? Elliot's voice from the back seat. Do stars remember us, even when we don't remember to look at them? A question, deserving thoughtful response. Philosophical inquiry from a 5-year-old mind. Her eyes flick to the rearview mirror, his serious expression awaiting wisdom instead of to the road ahead. Her choice, her responsibility. Headlights through rain. Blinding. Impact. Metal screaming against metal. Her body thrown forward. Airbag deploying half-second too late. The silence after. You treat this like a case study in your textbook, Jamie Elliott says, now entirely child-sized, but speaking with impossible adult knowledge. Is that easier than admitting you chose the phone call over watching the road? The words DIETONATE inside her chest. Breath fracturing. Pulse arrhythmic. 300 days of defenses disintegrating. Post-traumatic stress with complete. Language fails completely. Her vocabulary, once armor against emotion, now meaningless sounds against memory's tide. Hospital corridor stretches infinitely before her. Antiseptic, burning her nostrils. Time frozen at 2:37 a.m. The moment unchanged despite 300 days of scientific distance. 300 days of personal reflection spent deliberately not reflecting. She reaches for Jamie/Elliot, but her hands pass through his form, encountering only absence. Not hallucination, but memory materialized. I wasn't. The truth rises like floodwater, threatening to drown her. Clinical terminology evaporating. Harvard training useless against grief's undertow. I wasn't paying attention when it mattered most. Her hands shake uncontrollably. Blue ink flows across the floor, spreading from her pen, her notepad, her appointment book, all the places she's documented others' pain while refusing to acknowledge her own. My entire career, she whispers, helping others face what I couldn't bear to see. Mira finds herself kneeling on cold hospital tiles, forehead against sterile floor, professional identity dissolving in tears, suppressed for 300 days. I chose the phone call over watching the road. She confesses to emptiness, to absence, to irreversible consequence. The hospital corridor wavers, then dissolves. She's back in her office, familiar space rendered foreign by truth. Blue ink surrounds her, no longer threatening, but awaiting direction. Her diplomas, once sources of pride, now seem incomplete chapters in a larger story. She drives home through rain, no longer calculating statistical probabilities of hydroplaning, but feeling water against glass. Her clinical detachment, once armor, now recognized as barrier. Her hands on the steering wheel remember another rainy night, another drive, different outcome, same hands. Her apartment, meticulously controlled in whites and grays, appears through shifted perception. Not ordered, but empty. Not peaceful, but silent. 300 days of creating space that demanded nothing, remembered nothing, reflected nothing back to her. The hallway stretches before her. No more precise 60-degree turn. No more transient memory phenomenon diagnosis when vanilla scent registers. Tonight, she walks deliberately toward what she's avoided. The blue door pulses with its own heartbeat. Gentle rhythm, both inviting and terrifying. Blue light seeps beneath, casting underwater reflections across the floor. Her pulse accelerates. Tachycardia, 97 beats per minute. Old diagnostic habit. Same physical response. New understanding. She places her palm against the wood. Warm. Alive. An answering pressure, as if something, someone, presses back from beyond. I'm choosing to remember, she whispers, voice breaking, and turns the knob. Beyond isn't the sharp pain she feared. but a space where blues shift from midnight depth to dawn's gentle awakening. Stars hang suspended, constellations from a ceiling painted on a Saturday afternoon with small hands guiding hers. Not distant points, but presences casting soft illumination. The air carries forgotten scents: vanilla shampoo, apple detangler, chocolate milk, before bedtime, piano notes drift through blue. Chopin Nocturne, 4 hands at different octaves, laughter when they missed transitions. Elliot sits cross-legged beneath Draco, his favorite constellation, because dragons should get to live in the sky too. He wears the blue sweater with wooden buttons she'd helped him fasten that morning. When he looks up, his eyes hold both childlike wonder and impossible understanding. "You finally came," he says simply. "I was afraid," she answers, professional terminology inadequate for the ache in her chest. His small hand reaches for hers. Warm pressure, simultaneously present and preserved from before. "I've been here the whole time. I'm sorry," she tells him, words carrying 300 days of avoided grief. "I looked away when I should have been watching the road." He nods, serious expression, exactly as she'd seen in that final rear-view glance. "You were helping somebody who needed you. That's what doctors do." "Not more important than you," she whispers, voice raw. He considers this with child's directness. Maybe not more or less, just different. Like how we needed different sides of the piano bench to reach all the keys. She hadn't expected wisdom from loss, hadn't allowed possibility beyond absence. "Remember when I asked about stars?" he says, looking upward. "If they remember us when clouds come?" She nods, tears flowing without clinical categorization. "They do," he says with certainty. "Even when nobody's looking up." Blue light pulses around them, not invading, but connecting. Stars above and blue beneath, creating space between memory and presence, where healing begins. "Your patients need you to remember too," he says, child's voice with unchildlike insight. "Not just me, but what happened." She nods, understanding forming from fractured pieces. Not compartmentalization, but integration. Not absence, but transformation. Not forgetting, but carrying forward. "I won't stop looking for you in the stars," she promises. His smile combines mischief with impossible wisdom. "Even when you forget, I'll remember. That's what stars do." When Mira awakens, dried tears trace her cheeks. Her office has transformed. Pearl gray walls now carry blue undertones that shift with changing light. Harvard credentials hang beside a child's drawing of constellations labeled "Me and Mommy's Star Map." The clock runs smoothly past 2:37, that moment acknowledged rather than avoided. On her desk sits a fountain pen filled with blue ink. her deliberate choice now, not mysterious manifestation. Beside it, her appointment book with integration practice, replacing the blocks formerly labeled personal reflection. Not scheduled avoidance, but purposeful remembering. The phone rings. Dr. Chen about an urgent patient crisis. 300 days ago, she would have answered immediately. Today, she notes the time, 5:27 p.m. Elliot's astronomy club meets in her memory at 5:30. "I'll call back in 20 minutes, she tells the receptionist. "I have an important appointment first." She allows herself to remember for exactly 3 minutes. Blue sweater, constellation maps, questions about stars, before returning to professional responsibilities with renewed presence. Later that week, a new patient sits across from her, describing familiar patterns. "After my daughter's accident, I created separate compartments," the woman explains, fingers tracing invisible boundaries on the armrest. Work Susan never mentions Emily. Mother Susan only exists on scheduled Sundays, when I permit myself to visit her room. Mira recognizes her former self in this careful division. 300 days ago, she would have praised this compartmentalization as adaptive coping. Standard protocol suggests emotional containment during grief responses. Mira pauses, feeling blue ink against her fingertips. She deliberately sets her manual aside. "Protocols have their place," she says, leaning forward slightly, "but they can't account for how grief rewrites our internal maps. Compartmentalizing doesn't actually protect us. It fragments us. Integration doesn't mean constant pain, but allowing memory to exist alongside present moment." The woman's eyes fill with tears. "How?" "By acknowledging both your professional competence and your profound loss, not as separate identities, but as equally true aspects of who you are now." Later, Mira opens her own case file. She writes, "Subject demonstrates initial success in memory integration. Professional identity remains intact while accommodating emotional truth. Continued practice indicated." She pauses, then adds, "The stars remember us, even when we forget to look up." She signs the entry. Day 321. The blue ink catches light as it dries. Not the end of grief, but the beginning of carrying it differently. Veil of night. "I've said too much," Caroline exclaimed. She snatched her rain-soaked black denim jacket from the chair and turned to go. "Caroline, wait!" Hank caught her hand. Her slender fingers felt chill and damp against his. "You can't expect me to believe." "No," she murmured. "No one would. And that's the point. It was useless even coming here. I don't know why I did." Hank squeezed her limp fingers, giving them a shake. "Please, let's start over," he said, motioning for her to sit again. "This cult, it's a coven. The Sisterhood of Unhallowed Light. She fidgeted with a lock of damp, auburn hair stuck to her pale forehead. Right, the Sisterhood. So, a few women who get together and play at witchcraft? There are 12. They wanted me to join, and I thought I wanted that too. But Caroline caught her bottom lip between her teeth. The midnight hue of her black lipstick was a stark contrast to the pallor of her skin. She took a breath, and the words tumbled from her. I feel seen by them, like they really get me. They accept me. They celebrate me, just as I am. And what they offer, the sense of belonging, the knowledge, power. I thought, why shouldn't I? A flash of lightning lit the rain-spattered window, with a crack of thunder following close behind. Caroline's eyes grew large with panic, and she twisted in her seat to look outside. There are things we shouldn't play with, she whimpered. I know that now. I've completed 2 of the 3 initiation rituals with the Sisterhood. And you're saying this torrential rain we've been having these past 3 days is part of that? That's awfully biblical, isn't it? This isn't hurricane season, Hank. He shrugged and twisted his mouth in a half-ways grin. With weather patterns these days, who can tell what season it is anymore? It was me. It was the Sisterhood. It's part of the ritual, part of the summoning. Coincidence, that's all. She clutched his arm where the sleeve of his t-shirt ended, digging her cold, clammy fingers into his bicep, and pleaded. You wouldn't say that if you knew what I've done, what I've gone through to make this happen. Caroline, she let go of Hank's arm and fumbled with the top buttons of her black shirt. Yanking one half of it to her left side, she exposed part of her chest. A long vertical slash was bisected by a shorter one, forming an inverted cross over her heart. The 2 slashes stood out as angry purplish-red marks on her otherwise smooth, pale flesh, and were knitted together with black stitches. They made me promise my heart to Valthus, the formless entity of writhing darkness whom they worship. Hank stared for a moment, then sputtered. Valthus? Your heart? Come on, Caroline. What? Am I supposed to believe they've cut out your heart? Isn't it usually the soul these sort of fanatics are after? Caroline grasped Hank's fingers in her trembling hand and placed his palm over the wound on her chest. Her skin was unnaturally cool. He held his hand there for a moment, then brought his fingers up to her throat, feeling for a pulse. Another clap of thunder startled them both. Hank pulled his hand from Caroline's neck. He stared at her in disbelief, saying, "This is some kind of joke, a prank. It's not real. How could you be here telling me all this if they've taken out your heart?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "But I think I've made an awful mistake. You've got to help me. Promise you won't let them take me." "No, of course not. Where would they take you anyway? A hospital? It's an abandoned old church, Blackthorn Chapel. They want to take me there for the final ritual, Caroline said. To complete the summoning of Valthis, they need to make an offering of the heart. But aren't you supposed to be joining them? Becoming one of their coven? This sounds more like a sacrifice. Yes, it does. They told me it was my initiation. But Caroline trailed off, turning to stare at the rain beating against the window. In a low whisper, she continued, "Now I'm not so sure. That's why I'm frightened." The blinding flash of light lit up the nearby window, and a deafening roar of thunder shook the house. A loud crash followed. Nearby, a car horn began sounding, repeating its alarm annoyingly. Hank leapt to his feet and crossed the room to look outside. Christ, that was close. The tree next door has split nearly in two. Some of its limbs have fallen over a few cars on the street. The lights inside the house flickered. Once, twice, and a third time before plunging them into darkness. "I'll get some candles," Hank said, cursing as he caught his toe on some piece of furniture. He fumbled his way to the kitchen. "Just need to find my phone so I can light the way." One more thunderclap boomed overhead. A sudden blast of wind swirled through the house. Footsteps pounded across the floor. Caroline shrieked, and there were sounds of a struggle from the other room. "No!" Caroline cried out. "I won't go! Hank, don't let them take me." Hank stumbled from the kitchen and could see down the hallway to the front door. It was swung wide open, and the wind and rain swept through in howling gusts. "Caroline?" Hank called out. He heard glass shattering all around him. The back of his head felt like an explosion had gone off, and the world tilted and shifted into slow motion. Hank sank to his knees. His vision was filled with a combination of swirling stars and inky blackness. The sounds of frantic struggle moved away from him as his hands slapped the carpeted floor. He struggled to breathe and clear his sight as he held himself from pitching forward onto his face. "Caroline!" he shouted. His head throbbed viciously, and he thought he might be sick. From outside, he heard car doors slamming, and a vehicle roared to life. He struggled to his feet and made it to the front door. Through the sheets of rain, he saw the burning glow of red tail lights receding down his street. Pursuit wasn't an easy option. The tree limbs, which had fallen over several cars, were blocking Hank's car as well. He slashed at them with a hatchet he had stowed in his camping gear. The rest of the fallen limbs tore at the side and undercarriage of Hank's car, but he managed to break free. He swore and cursed some more. The lousy cell service the storm had left him with made searching the internet difficult. After several minutes, he found directions to and a description of Blackthorn Chapel on a website promoting ghost walks in the city. Once a place of worship, the old chapel had fallen into disrepair, and the ground beneath was, so the locals claimed, cursed. It took nearly an hour to detour around storm debris and reroute past streets that had been rendered impassable before he arrived at his destination. If he'd paid the $50 for the Ghost Walk tour, Blackthorn Chapel would have rated 5 stars. It was surrounded by an overgrown and tangled hedge of blackthorn shrubs, buffeted by the wind and rain. The gnarled limbs seemed to claw at the twilit sky, as though grasping at something unseen. The crumbling stone walls were cracked and weathered. The roof was partially caved in, showing an outline of jagged edges that looked like the jaws of some wild beast snarling or snapping at the heavens. And the heavy wooden doors were worn and splintered and hanging slightly ajar on great rusted iron hinges. The jet-black gloom beyond the entrance seemed more of warning to sensible folk rather than an invitation to step inside. But if there was any chance he might save Caroline, inside was where Hank needed to be. He passed through an opening in the rough hedge, careful not to let the thorns sink their barbs into him. Walking in through the front entrance, he'd decided, would be courting failure. He might as well put his head through a noose. Instead, Hank crept around to the side of the run-down property, searching for another way into the chapel. Lightning lit the horizon several miles off. The brief flash revealed to him that he was creeping through a graveyard, which was part of the chapel grounds. Most of the headstones were crooked, sinking into the ground. Some had fallen or been knocked over. Many lay half-buried in tufted humps of wild grass. With a sense of dread, he picked his way carefully through the tangle of ancient stones and grass until he was out of the graveyard and could lean against the chapel wall. His heart was pounding as he panted silently, trying to catch his breath. Above the howling of the storm, a sound caught his ear. Soft at first, but regular, insistent, and coming from inside the chapel. Hank strained to make out what he was hearing. It was definitely chanting of some sort. Hank edged along the stone wall to the back of the crumbling old building. The ground sloped down, revealing the foundations of the chapel. He spotted a break in the wall and rushed to it. It was a narrow space, but large enough, he felt, to squeeze inside. Before he did so, Hank hefted the hatchet in his hand. He couldn't imagine actually using it to hack away at some unseen coven member. That would be slasher movie extreme. He twisted it in around in his hand so that the square end faced out, becoming his weapon. He sucked in a few deep breaths, questioning his sanity. Then he scraped and squeezed his way through the narrow space. Feeling his way around in the dark, Hank discovered a series of long wooden boxes. he thought. Could this night get any spookier? He'd found his way into the crypt. It took him a few minutes to pick his way around, but he eventually found a set of stairs leading to the proper part of the chapel. This was one of the cloisters, or side chapels. The chanting was more distinct. He could make out the words, "Valthis, Valthis, veil of night, drown the stars, consume the light from the maw, where silence dies. Open now your 1,000 eyes." He edged carefully toward a gap in the wall, which entered into the chapel's nave. There were broken pews scattered throughout the space, casting long shadows from the candles, which lit up the altar at the front. Shadow deep and shadow wide, stretch the fold, let worlds collide. What was whole? Let it decca, let the void now have its way. He saw Carolyn, bound and gagged. She was wide-eyed and frantic, struggling to break free of her bonds. Unseen horror, whispered breath, we call you forth. We offer death. One by one, we fade. We kneel, take our names, unmake us real. A quick count revealed only 8 figures in hooded robes surrounding Caroline. He thought she'd said they were 12 in number. But this would be better odds. Hank hefted the hatchet in his hand one more time, feeling as confident as a person could ever be faced with such a scene. He took one step forward, but that was as far as he got. He was grasped from behind, his arms, legs, and even his torso in the grip of unseen talon-like hands. With swift force, they pulled him backwards, throwing him off balance. A ragged cloth was pressed over his nose and mouth. He struggled and tried to scream. Then blackness engulfed him. When he came to, Hank found he was now stretched out over the altar. His hands and feet were bound. Looking up, he could see eerie shadows playing across the vaulted arch above. "I'm sorry, Hank," Caroline said. "I had to do it." He snapped his head around in the direction of her voice and saw she was standing to his left. She held a long, curved dagger in her hands. The other coven members, all 12 of them now, were surrounding him. We needed a heart to complete my initiation and call down Valthis." He thought he'd known fear earlier in his pursuit of Caroline's attackers. Now, a choking sensation that felt like ice was spreading through his chest. In his head, Hank shouted Caroline's name, but the gag in his mouth prevented him from getting that or any other words that followed out. The coven members began to chant once more, "Valthis, Valthis, veil of night, drown the stars, consume the light." The unspoken relative. The door to the interrogation room creaked open. A girl was inside, still in the depths of REM sleep, did not stir. Sleep was all she had, her only escape and only therapy from her current fate. She remained curled up on top of the table like a feline, conserving her energy before the hellhounds would be turned loose on her. Haley, a psychiatrist, made her way into the room. She could see the subject. Emily had insomniac circles around her eyes that made her look like a raccoon almost. Haley felt bad for having to wake her, but if Emily wanted sleep, she would need to talk at some point. She reached out and took Emily's hands in hers. They were calm and clammy. Emily emitted a faint whimper, but her eyes remained closed. Haley let go of her hands and brushed Emily's hair. Emily stirred, and her eyes sluggishly opened. Her dark eyes, with saucers for pupils, studied the green emeralds Haley had for eyes. They remained still, watching, then closed again. "Come on, hun. Time to get up." Haley spoke, lightly shaking her. Emily whimpered and covered her face with her arms. Haley stood and scooped her off the table. She expected a fight, but Emily remained docile in her grasp. Before Haley could put her down, Emily clung to her and rested her head on Haley's shoulder. It was difficult to imagine Emily was capable of what the police were accusing her of. Emily was acting more like an 8-year-old than 18. That could be cracked up to the recent traumatic experience she endured. She had recently learned who her real father was, after he took her mother, and stepfather hostage. Her mother was currently recovering from injuries in the hospital, while her stepfather had succumbed to his injuries. Emily wailed suddenly, catching Haley off guard. The reaction was so sudden that Haley almost dropped her. "Honey," Emily buried her face in Haley's chest, with heaving sobs that made her tremble all over. Haley rubbed her back and comforted her, something that Emily never got from anyone since they found her in the house. She had passed out with the landline phone still in her grasp, with a split table beneath her that broke her fall. Haley had a job to do here, however, and that was not to comfort a possible suspect. Haley gently pried her off and sat Emily down in a chair. "I'm going to be honest," Haley began. "They suspect you conspired with your father." All the melanin drained from Emily's skin. This couldn't be happening. She quickly shook her head in denial. Emily strained herself, attempting to protest, but her voice cracked, and her words died in her throat. "You may want to see this," Haley said, handing her a tablet. A frightened moan escaped her mouth when the video started playing. When Emily learned the truth, she attacked and interrogated her stepfather in the basement for putting a wool over her eyes, while her real father was otherwise engaged upstairs. And now, law enforcement suspected she was hiding her father's whereabouts. They intended to use this footage as leverage against her if she refused to cooperate. Her knees drew up to her chest as reality washed over her. His blood was on her hands too, whether she liked it or not. But this didn't mean that she conspired with her father. They needed to know that. Emily tried to speak again, but like before, her words could not reach the surface. Like baby sea turtles being plucked away by famished seagulls before reaching the ocean, words still eluded her. She buried her face in her hands, sighing shakily. Haley placed a small notebook before her along with a pencil. Emily sniffled and started to write. "So, he took your cuffs off for good behavior?" Haley asked. Emily nodded. "And after you found out the truth, you became angry with your stepfather?" Emily replied with a reluctant nod. She wrote her next question with a trembling hand. "There's nothing I can do to avoid prison, is there?" Emily pushed the notebook over to Haley, with tears starting to trickle down her face again. "You can tell me where he is," Haley said. Emily whimpered in frustration. "I don't know where he is, because I did not conspire with him," she wrote. "It's not up to me on what happens to you," Haley began. "But you need to give them something if you wish to avoid prison. Even if you didn't conspire with him, you still assaulted your stepfather, who is now dead." Emily huffed and snatched the notebook. "My father's gun killed him, not me," she wrote. "You stabbed your stepfather with a fork. He already had a severed leg and a missing finger, which I believe had his wedding ring on it. You very well could have. Do you think a jury would let you go free after that?" Emily choked back a sob. "I'm sorry, hun. I know you were under a great deal of stress, but that still does not excuse your actions. He's one of my teachers in high school, okay? Mr. Black is what he goes by. I'm sure that's how he found out that I was his daughter." Emily wrote. "Okay, maybe that will help them find him." "Anything else?" Haley asked. "Please, I need to be there for my mom, so she pulls through." Emily wrote. "I'll see what they think about this," Haley said, taking the notebook with her. "But after what you did to your stepfather, I doubt you'll be allowed to see your mother in the hospital. It's for her own safety." Emily's face fumed in disbelief at what she heard. With that, Haley left her to sit alone with her thoughts. 2. When the sheriff entered the interrogation room, Emily's heart sank like an anchor to the depths. She sheepishly wiped her tears away with her sleeves. "Save your crocodile tears for another day," his eyes said. "You'll be held at a local hotel under house arrest till your court date," the sheriff said, attaching a tracker to her ankle. "You can use the phone inside the motel to call your mother in the hospital. Perhaps that will help you find your voice again. Better pray you find it by your court date," he continued, escorting her out. 3. On court day, her mother was not well enough to attend. However, she was thankfully still alive and recovering. Emily quietly sat next to her appointed lawyer. The judge and jury were informed that, due to the events Emily had been through, she had trouble speaking, and her lawyer would speak for her. They had given her a notebook and pen to use to communicate as well. Emily was prepared to own up to what she did, however. The crowd was certainly a surprise, which threw her off. She hoped it stemmed from curiosity about her father rather than hatred towards her. She nervously watched as the judge made his way to the podium. He was an older gentleman with a horseshoe mustache that commanded respect. A man with true grit that would not hesitate to punish any poor soul that dared question his authority. To the full extent of the law, he despised any scumbag attorney that would willingly fight for a defendant that was obviously guilty. Emily could not tell what his initial impression was of her just yet. Take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be mindful of the jury and the defendant. Keep y'all's voices down so they can hear themselves think. The judge spoke as the jury filed in. Emily reluctantly turned to see who her selected peers would be. 6 women of varying ages filed in first. Perhaps she had a chance of being shown mercy after all. 6 men followed, and suddenly her throat felt deprived of oxygen, and her eyes dilated like saucers. The word escaped her lips, and she quickly covered her mouth with both hands. But the room had grown silent as a Buddhist temple. It was too late. What was that, miss? The judge spoke, making her flinch. Emily quickly turned away from the jury and spoke for what felt like the first time in weeks. Nothing. Sorry. She spoke with an awkward rise in her voice. Mind repeating what you said a moment ago? I was under the impression that you didn't speak. The judge said. Objection, Your Honor. Her attorney stepped in. Overruled. You were saying, miss? The judge spoke. Emily swallowed hard, and her skin was as crimson as a lobster. Much like a lobster, she was in hot water now as well. Do you want to be held in contempt for lying to the court about your condition? The judge asked. No, I'm not, she hiccuped. Lying. Enlighten me on how you did not lie to the court, miss. The judge pressed. Your Honor, I made it clear she has difficulty speaking, and that she is, or in this case, was temporarily mute. The key word was temporarily. Her attorney spoke. Clearly, she speak for herself now, mister. Now would you or she care to repeat what her first spoken word was, so we can move forward with this case? The judge replied. Objection, Your Honor. Her attorney spoke before Emily placed her hand on his wrist. Overruled. The judge spoke to him. Please, Emily said to her attorney before standing to face the judge. I saw someone that looked like my dad. That's all. I'm mistaken, obviously. But it took me by surprise. So, we have it on record. Repeat the exact word you spoke for me, miss. I will not ask you again. The judge said. Daddy, that's what I said. I was mistaken. Sorry, Your Honor. Emily spoke meekly. Why don't you point out the individual you mistook for him? Would you kindly? The judge spoke. A small trickle ran between her legs, and Emily winced, hating herself. In fact, why don't we show everyone what her father looks like? Shall we? The judge said. And a projector flashed a picture of Mr. Black on the wall behind him. This is the man responsible for the death of Emily's stepfather and for her mother, who is currently in hospice care. What we are here for currently, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is to figure out whether Emily knows of his whereabouts, and 2, whether she conspired with him against her stepfather. The judge spoke. "Now, isn't that a load of horse shit?" A voice cackled. A man in the jury stood, and Emily's fears were confirmed. His disguise could fool most, but not her. "You think she's capable of this? Hell, she couldn't even keep it together when she caught a glance of my face." Mr. Black laughed, pressing his revolver against another juror, urging them to walk up with him. The police officers and security guards all drew their weapons, but Mr. Black revealed his own weapon that was strapped to his chest. There was a rise of panic from the bystanders and the jury. "Enough!" the judge roared, and the crowd simmered down. As the Joker once said, "Let's not blow this out of proportion. I'll only take a moment of your time, one way or another." Mr. Black said, "You've got balls showing your face around here." The judge spoke. "I'm just here to make sure an innocent person doesn't go to jail. Lord knows the law has a way of fucking that up." Mr. Black replied, "I propose an exchange then. You go to jail while she goes free. That, I reckon, is how it should have been all along." The judge said, "Ha! You should go on stage and see how far that joke gets ya." Mr. Black cackled. "What's the plan here? What's your end game?" the judge asked. "It's simple. If you all want to live, you let us leave quietly. Remember, the juror I replaced is elsewhere, awaiting your assistance." Mr. Black said. The judge, a veteran from the war in Afghanistan, recognized the bomb Mr. Black had strapped to his chest. It was capable of taking out a whole block. Everyone inside this building would be cooked like a Thanksgiving turkey when all was said and done. "Drop y'all's weapons," the judge ordered. The officers followed suit. "Let's be on our way, Emily." Mr. Black spoke. A frightened moan escaped her mouth. She had no idea her father was capable of this. He would be labeled as a terrorist in the news. There was no coming back from that. "Don't waste my time, sweetheart," Mr. Black hissed, pressing his revolver against the juror's forehead. Emily whimpered and reluctantly stood up. "Can you tell me where the other juror is before you go?" the judge asked. "Good man," Mr. Black said, opening the door to the judge's quarters. Through there was a quick exit to the parking lot. "I left a note with an address under my juror seat. If anyone stops me, that place will blow too," Mr. Black said. Emily gagged as her nerves started getting the better of her. This was all too much to take in. But Mr. Black tugged her inside by the collar of her shirt, urging her to keep moving, and they ran to the exit door. Outside, there were 2 cars waiting for them. Mr. Black shoved his hostage to the floor and slammed the door shut behind him. Emily eyed both cars in confusion. She yelped when she felt something hot sting her arm. Emily looked up at her father as everything around her grew brighter. "Why?" she whimpered. "Can't risk you having second thoughts," Mr. Black replied with a wink, removing the small needle from her arm. Emily was too weak to resist when he laid her down in the back seat of a Chrysler 300. He rode in a different car, and she passed out before they drove away. 4. Emily awoke with a start in what felt like another lifetime. She was cocooned in a hammock, ready to hatch into a new life, it seemed. Her sluggish eyes registered a clustered forest of coconut palms around her, and a man sitting at a nearby table. He wore a straw hat and was sipping on a pina colada. "Welcome back," Mr. Black said. The ocean was a shimmering shade of teal in the sunlight, roaring in the distance. "Is Mom okay?" Emily slurred. "She'll be fine," Mr. Black said, "but she'll need her distance for some time before she forgives us. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.